What up, leaders? Welcome back to my channel. This is Atlantic Gardens. It's about 7:30 in the morning on the East Coast. That's the East Coast traffic heading into Georgetown. I'm going to take a quick look at what's happening here in Atlantic Gardens. So, Atlantic Gardens, one of the more mature, older neighborhoods in Guyana, on the east coast of Guyana. It was, in fact, one of the earlier suburbs. Right, one of the earlier suburbs when there were such a thing as suburbs. And so it's kind of one of the established neighborhoods. Here, in fact, is Almond Drive. Almond Drive. That's the first street here in Atlantic. And this one is called Azalea Avenue. So what's interesting is that these streets have nameplates, street names, plates on the street corners, which is kind of new and refreshing because some of the other neighborhoods have not yet matured to the point where the streets have names or the names have been placed. But what is interesting about this neighborhood in Atlantic Gardens is that it is a mature neighborhood in the sense that some of these homes have been built since the 1960s and 1970s, 1980s, earlier than a lot of these new neighborhoods, like the one we just left in Montrose. And so you can see how the neighborhood has matured over time, which is what we're doing in this series of videos, to see how things are changing. Now, some of you have lived in some of these neighborhoods, so you can tell immediately. Let's say you lived here 50 years ago, you can tell how the neighborhood has changed in the last 50 years. Morning.
Morning.
Right, but I'm actually just going by the architecture. So you can see some of the previous architecture. I just want to point out this home, for example. It looks like a home that was built in South Ruimveldt Gardens back in the 1970s, right? You can see the general feature architecture similar to what was built in the 1970s. But as you can see, a lot of these homes were modified subsequently using some of the same features that we've noted in previous videos, that back in the 1980s, a lot of these homes became concrete on the bottom. Morning. On the bottom floor, because that was a trend in the 1980s and 1990s and beyond. They started making the entire house into a concrete home. So for example, this one is fully concrete homes. And then of course, in the 2000s and beyond, they started building homes that looked more like the homes they found in North America. This one, for example, has a garage in the front. That's typical of Ontario, Canada, where of course building a home with a garage in front was to accommodate the fact that in winter you want to be able to drive straight into your home and not have to deal with unloading your groceries in your driveway. So that actually has become a preference, a North American preference that has made its way into Guyanese architecture. But this is what's happening here in 2023. In 2023 in Atlantic Gardens. Morning. So a lot of the architecture bears the marks, the features of, say, having been built in the 1960s originally because of the shape, but now the newer homes are being built like this, for example. So this is a new home being built in Atlantic Gardens, and as you can see just from the architecture, the shape of the roof and the footprint of the house, architecture. It's compared to, let's say, the ones nearby, different, and reflects a preference for what is now popular. All right, it's Dahlia Drive. It says Dahlia Drive here. Ficus Avenue. So that's Dahlia and Ficus. And I can see beyond that is the train line road in the back. But yeah, this is what's happening here in Atlantic Gardens, here on the east coast of Demerara. Azalea is the one we just came off of. Once looking back where we came from. And this is Dahlia. So what has happened over the years is that homes have been modified, some have been renovated, we'll say 50 years from what was originally Guyanese architecture for single family homes into eventually 1980s and 1990s upgrade, which made it concrete, and then eventually to architecture that bears a lot more of the resemblance of what was built in the South American South. This is Dahlia Drive and Bougainvillea. That's Bougainvillea Avenue. So a lot of the new developments here in Atlantic Gardens have to do with increasingly modern architecture, in the sense that it reflects the tastes of people who have traveled abroad and have returned with preferences for some of the architecture that they lived in, they experienced abroad. This, for example, was what some of the 1980s and 1990s renovations looked like, but this is actually a new building. This is going up in 2023, and you can see morning high arches. Your home?
No, they made clear here for this vehicle come.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're blocking the road. You're right. So this is what's happening here. A lot of the new homes that are going up are being built to North American specifications, reflecting some of the changing tastes, right? So because back in the 1980s and the 1990s, right, some of the preferences tend to be much more local, parochial, and the modifications or renovations tended to reflect local tastes. But as you go further, over time, people started building homes such as this, for example. Could have been in Queens, New York. So that's what's happening here in morning. This is what's happening here in Atlantic Gardens. Some of the changes happening here in Atlantic Gardens reflecting changing architecture, changing house designs, housing preferences. This is Botanical Square. You're actually right behind, I think that's the Massey Stores building. So we've come all the way east of where we started, Botanical Square. And then out here, well, we're simply going around the perimeter of Atlantic Gardens at this time, showing you how the architecture is changing over time. So this, for example, would have been 1980s architecture, right, because of the concrete and the shape. But then, of course, this is what was built in 2000s and beyond. You can see massive, what looks like a multi-unit condominium going up there, being built in the 2020s. Right, this is Canalili Avenue. So this is it, guys. This is what's happening in this neck of the woods. Atlantic Gardens, as I promised, to show you how things are changing in Guyana. This is how things are changing here in Atlantic Gardens, one of the older suburbs, more mature residential neighborhoods on the east coast of Demerara. And you can see even here that a lot of the architectural changes, architectural designs, particularly the recent ones, are beginning to look more and more like the homes that are built in the American South, and in some cases Canada, in Ontario, Canada, reflecting, I believe, some of the preferences of Guyanese returning from living abroad, probably retiring to the tropics and building homes that they've gotten accustomed to or learned to appreciate from living abroad. This one seems to be an extension in the works, and building a larger home in the rear. And these, what is actually different from, say, North America is the colors. Although a lot of these homes are now adopting some of the beiges, the earth tones that are common, say, in North America or Ontario, for example, where the homes tended to be built for resale. Now, if you're building a home, you want to paint it and decorate it in a way that wouldn't offend buyers, and so the preference for earth tones came out of that background. But in Guyana, we've always had very colorful homes, and it's good to see that tradition remains. In the Caribbean, we've always had pink homes and red homes, green homes, blue homes. You know, colors tended to be quite bright, which is kind of a difference from North American homes built in North America. But this is Atlantic Gardens, guys. Tell me what you think about the changes happening here in Atlantic Gardens. I promise to bring you an update on some of the changes in these neighborhoods, some of the older neighborhoods in the city. This is a new home that's going up, as you can see, massive in terms of square footage. And that is one of the things that are, this is Canna Lily Avenue in Begonia, so it's Begonia Avenue. Yeah, so one of the things that are changing here is that the new homes that are being built to maximize the square footage. The footprint of the home, for example, is built to maximize the coverage of the land, the lot that it's built on, and then as tall and as massive as they can to maximize the square footage. And that is out of the tradition in North America, where a house, the value of a property is largely based on the square footage. So if you want to build an expensive home in North America, you build a home that's 5,000 square feet and so on. So it's Begonia Drive here in Atlantic Gardens. Morning. Right, so we've gone through, I think, the periphery of Atlantic Gardens, and what you've seen is that a lot of the changes reflect changing tastes, preferences in architecture, but you can still see some remnants of the original neighborhood, right? This was, in fact, a suburb of single-family homes, and a lot of that still exists. You know, the single-family home nature of the community, the neighborhood, still exists. However, what seems to be changing is the Begonia and Cactus Avenue. That's Cactus Avenue in Begonia. Let's see. And I think this is where we came in originally, Azalea. Let's make our exit through Cactus Avenue. So that's it, guys. That is what is happening here in Atlantic Gardens. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. In the comments below, tell me what you think about changes happening here in Atlantic Gardens, here in Georgetown, Guyana. Well, on the east coast, it's not necessarily Georgetown. On the east coast of Demerara. Tell me what you think about the growing size. That's in terms of square footage, right? A lot of these homes are now massive compared to homes that were built in the original neighborhood in the 1970s and the 1980s. And a lot of the preference reflects the North American architecture, North American style. Here's a home we've actually been looking at from the Rupert Craig Highway, from the highway. We've seen this on the outside, that is from the highway side. Now taking a look at what it looks like on the south side, right? Seems as if it's going to be a hotel, but maybe not. They've already installed some air conditioners, the windows are in. Maybe it is a multi-unit condominium complex, or maybe it's just a large family home. We will see eventually as it gets completed. But this is what's happening here in... So, new guy welcoming us. This is what's happening here in Georgetown. Morning. In that's Bougainvillea Avenue here in not Georgetown, but Atlantic Gardens. Right? Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening here in Atlantic Gardens on the east coast of Demerara. Later! We're back on Azalea, and now we're heading back out to the east coast highway, Rupert Craig Highway.